Hi, this is Brandon from the OneMelt team. We're going to now look at the fault codes that may display on your OneMelt system. The OneMelt has a self-diagnostic within inside its main board that allows it to diagnose any electrical problem that may be found in any of your components. The fault codes that may display are labeled as F1, F2, F3, or F4. And more definitions of these codes can be found by referencing the troubleshooting manual of the OneMelt system that's provided. I'm going to talk about more in depth about these faults. On your OneMelt display, you normally will have the system monitoring all your set points for the components that are programmed in. If a fault code does come up, you're going to see the code display on that component whenever the scan mode reaches that particular component. In my case, I have an F3 fault that's come up. So just going through the definitions, the F1 fault is defined as an RTD open or failed or disconnected fault. So this is going to be an indication you need to check your RTD, which is your temperature sensor for any of your components of your unit, that being either the hose, applicator, or melter. You may want to refer to the troubleshooting video that talks about checking the resistance of an RTD. The RTD should be within its set temperature or set resistance based off its temperature reading. And if you get a flaky RTD or if it's failed open, you need to replace the RTD. And that would be indicated on the OneMelt system with the F1 code. Then we have F2. So the F2 is defined as an under temperature fault. And that's going to be because your actual temperature of a heated component is lower by a certain range compared to the set point. And this can be caused by several factors. The first thing you want to do in this case is double check that your RTD is working correctly. And again, you can reference the troubleshooting video on checking resistance for your RTD. The RTD should be stable reading, shouldn't be fluctuating around, and as long as it's within the chart range, we know your RTD is good. In this case, there's other factors that you may want to look at. Typically, it's going to be a low voltage situation. So check your voltage connection, make sure you have all line voltage present, and check for any loose wires or damaged wires that may cause voltage to not be at a component. Also, you may want to check the heater of any component. If the heater does fail open, that component will not heat, resulting in an under temperature. You can further diagnose this by looking at the set point or the actual temperature of your heat component of the OneMelt system and look at what the temperature is doing, as if it's at room temperature and never heating, or it's heating but it's very, very slow. This will sort of guide you in the direction of either a damaged heater or voltage problem versus a other variable like air blowing onto a component. The next fault code we're going to look at is the F3 fault. The F3 fault is defined as an over temperature fault, and this is where a actual temperature of a component is higher for a certain range as compared to the set point. In this situation, again, you want to make sure your RTD is working correctly. Again, referring to the troubleshooting video on checking resistance for an RTD. After confirming the RTD does work, we're going to look at other factors. Most commonly is due to a shorted triac or shorted relay on the main board or any other component that provides voltage to a component. And that's going to cause the temperature to keep rising until it faults out. So a common symptom is to see that your temperature continues to rise very rapidly after it reaches set point until it finally gives you a fault code. This usually indicates a shorted relay or triac, in which in this case you want to replace the board that's providing that power. Again, other factors can be checking any kind of other variable externally that may be providing heat to a component unexpectedly. In this case, hoses that are too close to each other can transfer heat, which can cause the hoses to rise in temperature. Other factors could be hot air blowing onto a gun applicator or hot air blowing onto a hose. So just check around to make sure there's no other external variables that may be causing the temperature to rise unexpectedly. The final fault is an F4 fault. This fault is defined as an open thermostat fault. The OneMelt system has a fail-safe feature with a button open on rise thermostat. The thermostat generally is normally closed and will open on rise at 500 degrees Fahrenheit. If you get an F4 fault, you want to check the continuity of the thermostat to make sure it is good and closed. And you also want to check any of the wiring to make sure it is secure to the terminal block and nothing has been damaged or disconnected. If any of these have happened, you want to either reconnect or replace the thermostat. This should take care of the F4. These are the 4 fault codes that the OneMelt will display. And again, you can refer to this by looking at the troubleshooting section of the OneMelt manual.